Tonight's inspirational speaker is Laurie Pelham. She is an RN and has an MA in communication disorders. She is a medium, Reiki master, and a therapeutic touch practitioner. She is a graduate of Psychic Studies Institute in Albany and Fellowships of the Spirit, School of Healing and Prophecy. Her volunteer work includes providing therapeutic touch in hospital settings and assisting with equine therapy at Victoria Acres. She is a Lilydale resident. And now, Laurie.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening.
Good evening.
For today's talk, I will be incorporating our monthly theme, planting seeds, along with a sprinkling of some thoughts and memories of Mother's Day. So when we think about the springtime and planting seeds, one of the first things that came to mind for me was a song that I sang before in chorus. I'll just sing a little bit of it if I can get it. Sow what you reap, reap what you sow, and the fruits of your labor will surely grow. So anyway, that came to me first of all. And you know, if you think about this song, it talks to you about planting seeds. And even if it's difficult, you will be rewarded with a fine harvest, which will be worth it. So examining this further, one could extract the thought: if I am good, and if I do good, good things will come to me. But what if you don't do good? As spiritualists, one of our principles is we affirm the moral responsibility of individuals and that we make our own happiness or unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. We are responsible for our own happiness. We take responsibility for our actions. During my career as an RN, I spent most of my time working in the mental health units on the crisis ward. We would evaluate people and then we would offer them help. We were also responsible for answering a 24/7 crisis line. At the last crisis unit where I worked, I had a new boss. One day she said to me and my coworkers, "I want to share with you something I learned at my last crisis job." We waited expectantly. She said, "If you plant corn, you get corn." And I thought to myself, well, that's really not original. Isn't that from the Bible? The Bible. Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 through 9. God inspired Paul to write, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh shall reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Those who sow or plant seeds to the flesh, meaning that they do what's wrong, ungodly, and sinful, reap destruction. Bad decisions lead to bad consequences. So I decided against quoting the Bible to my boss. I felt that aside from the consequences toward myself, it would take away from the pleasure she derived when she would walk around the unit and somebody would do something wrong and she would just yell out, "You plant corn, you get corn." So anyway, in our society today, unfortunately, we see many examples of planting bad corn that in some circumstances gets replaced with better corn. We know of criminals and some politicians that have used money or power or both to do this. Their money may buy them the legal defense team or give them the ability to hide their bad corn. Too often people put their focus not on doing good deeds, but rather on making and worshiping money. It is good to remember, whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. I didn't learn much from my boss in the crisis unit's rendition of reaping what you sow, but I did learn one thing that was true in the 3 different crisis units I worked in. There was one day of the year that was the most difficult and emotionally draining day to work, and that day was Mother's Day. Many people have issues surrounding their mothers. I lost my mother not long ago, and this is a difficult day for me. In thinking about her, I remember when I alone was the person to remove the items from her house and sell my childhood home. One day, I opened up the broom closet and found a yellowed and torn newspaper clipping taped to the inside. It mentions planting seeds in children's lives and what the results will be. Many of you may have heard this poem written by Dorothy Nolte. Children learn what they live. If a child learns with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with hostility, he learns to fight. If a child lives with ridicule, he learns to be shy. If a child lives with shame, he learns to feel guilty. If a child lives with tolerance, he learns to be patient. If a child lives with encouragement, he learns confidence. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. If a child lives with fairness, he learns justice. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith. If a child lives with approval, he learns to like himself. If a child lives with acceptance and friendship, he learns to find love in the world. And lastly, I have one more story. So back in the Stone Age when I was growing up, we had a TV with 3 channels, not even a remote control, the radio, an occasional magazine, and the newspaper. And in my case, growing up in Newark, New York, it was called the Courier-Gazette. My older sister loved to scour my mother's Ladies' Home Journal magazines for the monthly rendition of the series, Can This Marriage Be Saved? I always enjoyed the Dear Abby advice column. The following nugget was frequently printed and reprinted on Mother's Day, and I dedicate it to my mother. How many of you are familiar with, I had the meanest mother in the world? Condensed version. I had the meanest mother in the world. While other kids ate candy for breakfast, I had to have cereal, eggs, and toast. When other kids had Coke and candy for lunch, I had to have a sandwich. As you can guess, my dinner was different from other kids too. My mother insisted on knowing where we were all the time. She had to know who our friends were and what we were doing. She insisted that if we were gone for an hour, that we be gone for an hour or less. I'm ashamed to admit it, but she actually had the nerve to break the child labor law. She made us work. We had to wash dishes, make beds, learn to cook, and all sorts of things. I believe she lay awake nights thinking of mean things to do to us. She always insisted on us telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. By the time we were teenagers, she was much wiser, and our lives at home became even much more unbearable. None of this tooting the car horn for us to come running. She embarrassed us to no end by making our friends and dates come to the door to get us. She even made us go to church with her and Dad. My mother was a complete failure as a mother. She made us grow up into God-fearing, honest, educated adults. I am trying to raise my children, and I stand a little taller and am filled with pride when my children call me mean. You see, thank God, He gave me the meanest mother in the world. From this, I would say, the world doesn't need a good 5-cent cigar. It needs more mean mothers and dads. Happy Mother's Day.